First off, as a normative visionary futurist, I call myself visionary because I'm really an artist, an applied design artist and fine artist. But I don't think futurists really know the future at all, and I never fall into the prediction and saying what's going to happen in the future because we absolutely don't know. So please don't put me with that group. When I was thinking about what to talk about at this meeting, I decided that I would just kind of free fall and read some of the papers, as many as I could, the ones that weren't too far above my head, and get a feel for where you're at right now, the current situation. So that would be the current environment of AGI research and practice-based works, and theoretical, of course. And in doing so, I decided to take a look at intended consequences. And of course, that's based on unintended consequences, and probably one of the most obvious ones that we know in the last century was DDT, where the environmentalists and health advocates really got alarmed at the possibilities of synthetic pesticides on human health and animal life and vegetation. So there was a ban against DDT, if you all remember, and that was in the 70s. The unintended consequence, one of them was that millions and millions of people died from malaria, which was very frightening at that time. So it caused us to sit back and think, at least those of us who aren't alarmist environmentalists. So with that in mind, I think about how could we address AGI in the possible future? Now there's, of course, the singularity and views on that. There's the Hans Moravic's views on what could happen over here. And then there's certain other practical applications, as well as maybe a future Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's noosphere type of global brain, which is kind of exciting. But I think what I'd like to start talking about is how I look at this intended consequences. The perspective is from twofold, as I said in my abstract, which didn't go up on the web until the last minute because I was running late on another paper and I wasn't able to deliver it on time, so I apologize to you all. But basically, it's divided into two groups of thinking, futurist basic skills. And I did a lot of research on this, trying to figure out what I could deliver today that would kind of pinpoint it for you. And that is, one is called environmental scanning, which I'm sure you all know about, but I'm going to apply it to AGI. And the other one is called backcasting, where you have your preferred future, one of many futures, and then you say, this is where we're going to be in, say, 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, whatever. And then you backcast to where you are today, your current environment. And then that will lead you to possible wildcards along the way. It's an interesting type of game to play with yourself and your team. So in the law of intended consequences, I think it's important up front to have a clear indication of where you are right now in your current environment. What do you want as advocates of AGI? Okay, that's one thing. Then you have to separate that out with what does AGI need? And that's not easy to do because sometimes the wants that you have as the designers, as the visionaries, as the programmers, and the theoreticians may not have the needs of your baby in mind because you're often thinking about what you want, and we know this happened with AI advocates. So that's one way to look at it. The next thing to look at it is how do the wants and needs fit into the basic requirements in building your community. And that community is researchers, more academic involvement, more funding, and bigger like nodes all over the world, and maybe one big place in China or wherever, as suggested yesterday by Hugo, that would bring everyone together to get great funding and great product. So a clear indication means focusing on what you want, then infuse your wants with AGI's needs, and together these are the requirements for building AGI's future. In short, know your intentions, because they could produce AGI's consequences. Okay, the first part of this is what I call a convergent, unyielding focus on the basic requirements of AGI, forecasting and building goals and watching for discontinuities. Methods include environmental scanning, trend analysis, and risk assessment. Okay, this sounds very futurist. But let's look at it within your community. How could you do this? Now, I'm sure many of you already are practicing futurists in your own work because everyone today is an artist and a futurist and a programmer. That being a given, I'm coming in as an objective observer to see where I have a feeling or I intuit you're heading and what your needs are perhaps. Second, the divergent counter-advocacy of challenging assumptions concerning AGI and hidden wildcards. Methods include scenario development, of course, we've done many of these with nanotechnology, and strategic planning, and with an emphasis on backcasting and applied critical thinking. This pairing of convergent and divergent foci break an epistemological bridge between theories of shared knowledge used by development teams and the phenomenon of hindsight bias and seeing past events as more predictable than they were in fact. And that is called the rear viewer, the rear view mirror indication, and that icon there everyone knows is it happens and then the wild cards come about and then you analyze how it happened and then you know, okay, but then it's going to happen again because you don't learn from what you say you know because you haven't gone deep enough into it. Okay, so that's where the methodology of backcasting, I think it would be really crucial for AGI advocates. Environmental scanning, I think, is a really cool method to use, but I would suggest that you do it yourself or have your assistant do it or one of your researchers or someone in your office, and do it on a daily basis. Find the headline news, and fill out the questionnaire. And then you find that it starts building a whole library for you so you can get a finger on the pulse of where the trends are going and how they relate to you. And then you find all sorts of possibilities that are in fact hidden currently.
There might not be enough of these. So
there's probably not, so maybe one per table and whoever wants them. Okay. So basically, the method of environmental scanning helps you identify drivers of change, and if they're crucial, if they're critical, if they're basic common trends that occur and phase out, basically the characteristics. Here is the journal that Bruce is passing out, and this is one I did when I was working on my Master's of Science. Looking at some headlines in some of the Hartford Business Review, The Economist, Science News, and trying to find as far out ideas as possible and see how they fit into my particular thesis when I was working on that. Now, backcasting is, as I said before, where you project carefully your preferred future. So you have 10 possible futures that would be good, but you select one. And you say, okay, this is where we're going to start from. Now let's go backwards and see how we got there. I find this really exciting because oftentimes, I know I do in my own practice, I get involved in doing the work. And my vision is there, and then it somehow gets lost because I get involved in all the particulars along the way, and I might get distracted and never get to what my original vision was. And I think that's something that many of us humans fall into. And it's called analysis paralysis, maybe, or a little bit of the analysis paralysis is caught in with it when we don't really get to our vision. But I like this because you get your vision and you maybe do a Shakti Gawan visionary, mental image on it or meditation. That's where you are, okay. And in order to do that successfully, you have to know exactly where you are right now. Well, okay, pretty close to where you are now, as honestly as possible. The only way you can connect those dots is your honesty in that, and also the plausibility or the probability that your vision is obtainable, and there's the catch. The vision that you have must be obtainable. Okay, what's obtainable? Let's not get absolutism here, but as obtainable as possible. And it can be something that I think Hugo was saying, or someone was saying yesterday, that don't stop with small thinking. Imagine for the greatness. Don't get caught into task-oriented AI when you already know that you've separated yourself from it. Don't go back that way. Go forward. Okay. I'm sure you're reading this? So, okay. So here's just a small image of a possible layout graphic for backcasting. The present, the future, this is for sustainability, the steps along the way, substantial meetings, societal demands, how the cross is, but this is where you are and how did you get there. This is very simplistic. I have other ones. Okay. Here's a diagram of within this working arrangement of trying to find your team that's going to work with you and help you develop as clear a focus as possible. Who works together well? Well, I thought this was good because it shows the visionaries, the explorers, the builders, the lobbyists, the integrators, the regulators, the troubleshooters, the architects of thinking. Well, not all of them have the same characteristics and capabilities of doing one task and another. So you have to be really clear about your team and know who's on the bus and what seat they're on in working with your team, and make sure that those seats are taken appropriately for the skills of the person. And if you can't do it, admit you can't do it up front and find someone who can. That is going to help you with every methodology that you use, whether it's the convergent or the divergent thinking within planning your future.
So is each polygon one person?
Yeah.
It's one person or a team.
No, each blue polygon, is that
Yes.
one person?
Yes. Okay, so I'm skipping around a little here because I think that your minds are not linear, so I'm working with your lateral thinking. This I designed for looking at what are the components of environmental scanning. Well, we know there's threats, opportunities, trends, etc., but they're all around us constantly. When I was talking with Stephanie before coming over here today, when she was getting on the bus to go back to the airport, that is the journalist that was here at the conference. She said, why do you need to do environmental scanning, and why do you care about ethics if you haven't built the AGI yet? Why are ethics a concern? Well, if we look at the environment around, let's say, the AGI community, there's all sorts of variables that are constantly influencing everything we do on a daily and momentary basis. Just as we're sitting here now, all of our senses are alert and paying attention to everything that's going on. So one characteristic of computer scientists and programmers is maybe to get a bit tunnel vision in the work. It's real important to make sure in your team of researchers that you develop that they have the capabilities and the personality traits, the characteristics of being able to look around and understand the environment, the social trends, the elements that are going on in the basic steep categories, that social, technological, environmental, economic, and political. Those are the basic, and then, plus others. But those are the basic areas that you need expertise in. In working with the environmental scanning as applied to the backcasting, it's also important to think about your change of management if you need to make any turns. For example, in the backcasting where you know your vision, you can see it and you're clear, you know where you are, and you want to figure out how you're going to get forward by going backwards. It's important to realize flexibility is okay, and that if you made a mistake, not a problem. Just get in and change it as soon as possible. And you find out that most businesses and organizations wait till there's a trauma or something drastic that has happened within the organization, like going bankrupt or whatever, before they get to a point where they're going to change the management. Well, that's not the way to look at it. The time to change is when you start noticing through your environmental scanning that something is going amiss. Okay. These are some basic tools. Over here I have monitoring, influence, foresight, perspective thinking, and assumption. And your basic change and forecasting in the future, and the element of environmental scanning in this package here of different methods within that particular methodology. Okay, now let's talk about the logic of intended consequences, or just intended consequences. I broke it down into two simple elements: an acceptance that the core values are subject to change, and an agreement that all analysis is incomplete. Okay, I kind of leaves it wide open for you. So what you think now could be subject to change, for example, the triple AI, or the relationship of AGI with AI, or the relationship with funding for AGI, any of these relationships. Okay, in my paper we talked about looking to futurology, logic of intended consequences. The logic of intended consequences means having a focused intended outcome, but being aware of unmeasured, unexpected events which could affect the outcomes. The immediate priority must be flexibility and an acceptance that core values are subject to change, and an agreement that all analysis is incomplete. The logic is similar to logic in performing a sport. Since I'm a downhill skier, I'm constantly having to look ahead at the moguls or the terrain. Any of those elements could change. The snow could become ice, the powder could become stiff, my skis could lose their edge. Anything could happen, and it's very, very similar to that. So, while the trail is defined by signage, beginner, intermediate, double diamond, whether beginner, intermediate, double diamond, the terrain along the way can shift at any moment, and the skier must be constantly scanning the environment for any discontinuities, and then, in a moment's notice, adjust his behavior to adapt. Strategists argue for clear, clean strategies and commitment. However, no matter how clear or informed the strategist, in truth, future is unknown. It needs the transdisciplinary efforts of teamwork with a strong leadership and a vision and multidisciplinary methodologies. Okay, now, this is what I like, and you may be bored with it. If so, put up your hands and I'll stop. This section in my paper is called The Critical Intersection of AI and AGI and AGI's Future. Okay, I'm waiting, okay. How can AGI successfully embrace and disassociate itself from AI? One way is to explore AGI's future is to take a pause at the intersection of AI and AGI. We know that environmental scanning is a method for recognizing converging factors in assessing the environment around AGI. We know that backcasting is a significant method for assessing diverging factors which could cause discontinuities in a focused plan. But what about the intersection where they meet? AGI advocates might suggest that AI is beneficial as a task-oriented arm of AGI and invite AI advocates to play a core practical role. Alternatively, AGI advocates might shame the currents of AI as severely narrow by 21st century standards and lacking skill and foresight to address its winter by having retreated at that time. However, a pragmatic and possibly beneficial option might be to promote the timeline of AI, its successes and its failures, and focus on how it led to AGI and the alternative futures for AI and AGI. Systems thinking is one tool which allows users to change the variables, agents, and their influencers by degrees. Knowing these details and having them available for students, researchers, executives, funding sources, etc., will set a precedent that AGI is fully aware of the upside and downside of AI, fully aware of complete and missing theories on general intelligence and consciousness, and cognizance of the collaborative advantages within the field of neuroscience and cognitive science, and skillfully aware of applications of virtual environments. Here, a taxonomy for the field of AGI is a timeline events, a 3D synergistic mind map, which are all part of the media library supporting and even encouraging AGI's future. Well, I saw hints of that yesterday. In some of the animations, which I thought were really excellent. But it's a good way also to inform other people about what AGI is. So I thought it was really very interesting for me to listen to the talks yesterday and today, and see this view about the book versus the journal, the conferences, where to fit in, what to do. And I think about what is the real, if the real goal is to build super intelligent life, to build consciousness, what is all this other stuff along the way? How true do you all want to be to that goal? I mean, it's like, how much do you want to reveal? Is it like a quick peeky look? Or is it, here we are, this is who we are, and this is what we're doing? It's a little bit scary when you're thinking about how to get funding and how to get academic institutions to develop departments. So I think that is the critical intersection, which I think needs a tremendous amount of investigation and research and pondering about, because that could either make or break a possible future. When you think about it, that is the crux. Why do we need it? In my paper, I'm not going to refer to my paper anymore, and I'll just paraphrase. One of the big questions is why? Why? Why do we need superintelligence? Well, if we look at the future, we can pretty darn well see why we need it, because the human brain is not capable of thinking in the complex ways that an AGI could. And I think Peter Voss is really, pinpointed this so precisely in many of his talks and papers And this maybe is a transhumanist perspective or a perspective of how we want to evolve and augment and enhance for our future and what we want to become. But we know darn well that no matter what we become, we cannot solve the problems at the level we're addressing them. So how do we want to approach funding, academia, research, and the whole look and feel and marketing of AGI? We could take that approach of that we need to solve these problems and the brain can't do it. Okay. The other side is, who is going to build AGI if, say, quote unquote, we don't? Will the bad guys build it? And what will happen then? Will they have runaway AGI scary scenarios that brings in concepts about the singularity and why there's a need for Ellie's friendly AI? So then that's another issue. How far do we want to take that? I mean, do we want to expose that or hide it? And who is capable of really understanding the depth, the dimensions of the possibility of a singularity outside advocates of smart intelligence and awareness about the future? So these are some of the issues that I hope we talk about in the session. I won't go on, I'll cut it short now, although I could go on for probably days. But I think it's tremendously exciting times. This intersection right now is tremendously exciting, and I say let's bring AI forward to where it needs to be. And as Ben said in his in the press release about let's go the next step and go forward with what we know and what we can see for AGI. Thank you.